My wife smiled with her friends. I run him with one thing. So I pulled that one thing off the table and let her learn how little control she truly really had. I never thought a single conversation could unravel my entire life. But the moment I heard her words, my marriage, everything I thought I knew, shattered, and I realized I'd been living a lie. It was a Tuesday evening, around 7. I pulled into our garage in Austin, tired from showing an office space to some tech guys who wouldn't shut up about crypto. The air was still and warm, but inside, a cold realization was about to hit me. I'd been sitting, rolling over, and playing dead for 3 years, a leash around my neck I didn't even know existed. My name is Daniel Miller. I'm 32, I sell commercial properties in Austin, and until that Tuesday, I honestly thought my marriage to Chloe was solid. Routine, sure, but isn't that just how things go after a few years? I woke up, went to work, came home, watched TV, went to bed. Repeat. Nothing dramatic, nothing awful, just what I thought was normal married life. Sometimes she was happy, sometimes she wasn't. And I just figured, that's women, right? God, I was so wrong. So unbelievably wrong. I grabbed my laptop bag and walked into the kitchen. Instantly, I heard Chloe's laugh from the living room. That specific, unhinged cackle she only lets out around her girlfriends. She was on speakerphone, and I could clearly hear Brooke and Sarah laughing along with her. I wasn't trying to snoop, I was just getting a water bottle from the fridge. But then, Brooke's voice cut through, clear as day. So, how do you keep Daniel so well behaved? The room went silent for a beat, and then Chloe said, I control him with one thing. They all erupted in laughter, like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. I froze, fridge door still open, cold air washing over my face. Then Sarah chimed in, oh my God, same. Kevin thinks he's Mr. Independent, but the second I go cold for a few days, he's like a lost puppy. More cackling. Chloe went on about how men are simple, how they'll do anything if you just use intimacy as leverage. Brooke added that her husband completely dropped poker night after she gave him the silent treatment for a week. They were swapping strategies like football coaches sharing playbooks. Someone mentioned the I'm tired excuse, another talked about going to bed early without a good night to make them panic. And Chloe, my wife of 3 years, agreed with every single word, like she was attending some masterclass on relationship manipulation. I slowly backed out of the kitchen, into the garage, and sat in my car. Engine off, door closed, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to absorb what I'd just heard. My hands were trembling, not necessarily from anger, but from a chilling realization spreading through my chest. I started replaying our entire relationship in my mind. And suddenly, every single confusing moment clicked into place. 6 months prior, I'd planned a camping trip with my brother, something we'd dreamed of for years. Chloe had seemed fine with it, even supportive, telling me to have fun. But the week before, she turned cold. She stopped any physical contact, her answers became monosyllabic. When I asked what was wrong, she'd just shrug, claim nothing. By Thursday, I was so desperate to fix whatever I'd broken that I canceled the trip, making up some work emergency for my brother. And just like that, Chloe was warm again, affectionate, everything back to normal. I actually thought I'd skillfully navigated some unseen bullet. No. I'd just been trained. Or 3 months ago, when I stayed late at work for 2 nights, finalizing a big deal that would bring in a solid commission. Nothing extreme, just until 8 instead of 6. Chloe didn't say a word, but she went ice cold. She slept on her side of the bed, facing away, stopped asking about my day. Every attempt to talk to her was brushed off. I spent the next week scrambling, trying to fix this invisible wrong. Flowers, date nights, apologies for working late, even though she'd never once said it bothered her. Eventually, she thawed. I'd told myself it was just a rough patch, something every couple goes through. But it wasn't a patch. It was a chillingly consistent pattern. I sat there for almost 30 minutes, just connecting dots I should have seen years ago. Every disagreement, even minor ones like dinner plans or what to watch, if I didn't immediately align with her choice, she'd withdraw. Not with shouting or slammed doors, just this quiet, calculated distance that made me feel like I was constantly failing some unspoken test. Intimacy, which should be about connection and mutual desire, had transformed into a perverse reward system. I had to earn it by being agreeable, available, obedient. If I was a good husband by her definition, I received warmth. If I veered off course, even unintentionally, I got coldness and rejection. And the most messed up part? I'd been blaming myself this whole time, thinking I was just awful at understanding her needs, a terrible husband, completely unable to read the room. Finally, I went inside. Chloe was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, humming softly, completely oblivious. She saw me, smiled, and asked about my day. Fine, I managed. She mentioned dinner was in the fridge. We just existed in the same space, like nothing had happened, because from her perspective, nothing had. She had no idea I'd hurt her. She didn't know the entire foundation of our marriage had just imploded in my mind. I heated some leftover pasta, sat at the kitchen table, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. She came over, kissed the top of my head, and went upstairs to shower. Such a normal gesture, the kind of casual affection you see in genuinely happy marriages. Except now, I couldn't help but wonder if it was real, or just part of the system, positive reinforcement for whatever I'd done right that day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, Chloe sleeping soundly beside me. And I realized I wasn't angry. I was something far worse, I was clear. For 3 years, I'd been adrift in this fog, constantly trying to decipher her moods, always adjusting my actions to sidestep her coldness, always feeling like I was one wrong step from being completely shut out. But it wasn't random. It wasn't my fault. It was deliberate. She'd been using emotional distance as a calculated tool to sculpt my behavior. And it had worked flawlessly because I'd never once questioned it. I'd mistaken it for compromise, for keeping my wife happy, for maintaining a peaceful home. But this wasn't peace. It was utter surrender. The truly terrifying part wasn't her actions, it was that she likely didn't even think it was wrong. She'd learned this somewhere, her mom, her friends, perhaps every piece of advice that treats men like simple animals to be managed, not partners deserving respect. I started to wonder, what if I just stopped playing along? What if I stopped shrinking myself to navigate her moods? What if I stopped trying to fix her coldness? What if I simply existed as myself, and let whatever happened, happen? The idea was utterly terrifying. I knew it would either force her to wake up, or it would end us. But for the first time in 3 years, I was okay with either outcome. I officially stopped playing the game on a Wednesday morning. The strangest thing wasn't how hard it was how incredibly easy it felt the moment I decided the rules no longer applied to me. I woke up that day and understood, I'd spent 3 years walking on eggshells in my own home. And I was done. Not an angry, dramatic done, just a quiet, permanent done with the entire manipulative system. Chloe was already downstairs, brewing coffee, likely expecting me to descend and perform our usual routine of gauging her mood and adjusting myself. Instead, I got dressed, grabbed my gym bag, untouched for 6 months, and walked right past the kitchen, out to my car. She called out, asking where I was going. I simply said I was hitting the gym before work. The look on her face was as if I'd just declared I was moving to Mars. You see, one of the first things to vanish when her control system took hold was my personal routine. I used to hit the gym 4 times a week. But slowly, subtly, she'd start. Comments about me never being home, how she barely saw me, how nice it would be to have morning coffee together. And like an absolute idiot, I'd adjusted. I stopped going. I told myself it was about being a good husband, prioritizing our relationship. But really, it was about keeping her happy so she wouldn't withdraw. Well, no more. I found a gym near my office, signed up for 6 months, and started going every single morning before work. Chloe immediately deployed her usual tactics. For the first few days, she was ice cold, short answers, early bedtime without a good night, her entire playbook. And I just let her. I'd come home, make my own dinner if she hadn't, watch whatever I wanted on TV, go to bed when I was tired. If she wanted to pout, that was her decision. The silent treatment only works when the other person is desperate to break it. And I wasn't desperate anymore. I was free. By the second week, she switched gears. The cold approach was clearly failing. Suddenly, she was intensely interested in my day, asking about work, suggesting we watch my favorite shows. She was physically affectionate in this obvious, calculated way that would have reeled me in a month ago. She'd touch my arm, laugh at things that weren't even funny, hint at nice evenings with a look in her eyes. I was polite, I was kind, but I didn't take the bait. I wasn't being cruel, I was just being honest. And honesty, in a system built on dishonesty, feels like cruelty to the person who created it. The real turning point came around 3 weeks in. I told her I was meeting my brother for drinks on Friday night, the same brother whose camping trip I'd cancelled 6 months ago. I didn't ask permission. I didn't check her schedule. I just informed her, the way you'd tell a roommate you won't be home for dinner. She got this look on her face, a blend of confusion and panic. "Oh," she said, with that subtle edge in her voice that used to make me instantly backtrack, "I thought maybe we could do something together this weekend." Instead, I simply said, "We can do something Saturday," and went back to my book. I swear I could feel the entire power dynamic in our marriage crack, like ice on a frozen lake. She tried to pick a fight that night, asking why I was so distant, why I didn't seem interested in spending time with her anymore. I could have unleashed everything I'd heard, everything I knew. But I didn't. I just looked at her and said, "I'm not distant. I'm just not asking for permission to exist anymore." Then I walked upstairs. That one sentence, I could tell, hit her differently than anything I'd ever said. It wasn't angry, it wasn't accusatory. It was just a plain statement of fact. I wasn't playing defense, I wasn't trying to fix things. I was simply stating reality. The next morning, she was completely transformed, almost genuinely sweet in a way I hadn't seen in years. She made breakfast, asked if I wanted coffee, trying to connect like a normal person, not a puppeteer pulling strings. Part of me desperately wanted to believe it, wanted to think she'd finally understood and was making a real change. But I'd been fooled too many times. I was polite. I thanked her for breakfast. But I did not soften my boundaries. I still went to the gym. I still made plans with my brother. I still existed as my own person, not an extension of her emotional control system. Here's what no one tells you about setting boundaries with a controlling person: they don't just give up. They cycle through every single tool they possess, desperate to find one that still works. Over the next month, Chloe swung from cold to sweet, angry, confused, then hurt, sometimes all in a single day. She accused me of having an affair, because apparently the only reason a man would stop being controllable is if he's getting his needs met elsewhere. She'd cry, claiming she felt like she was losing me. Which was ironic, given she never seemed concerned about losing me when she was the one creating all the distance. She'd try being the perfect wife for 3 days straight, elaborate dinners, over-the-top affection, then revert to ice cold when it didn't immediately reset our entire dynamic. Through it all, I remained consistent. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't playing games. I was just being myself. I went to the gym, saw my friends, worked late when necessary, made plans without seeking permission. I stopped treating intimacy like a reward I had to earn through good behavior. When she was warm, I responded in kind. When she was cold, I simply existed at my own temperature. I stopped chasing her moods, stopped trying to decode her signals, stopped shrinking myself to avoid her disapproval. The strangest part was the profound calm I felt throughout it all. For 3 years, I'd been a constant ball of anxiety, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always wondering what I'd done wrong, always trying to fix problems I didn't create. But once I stopped playing, once I truly accepted that our marriage might end and that I would be okay, the anxiety vanished. Her coldness held no fear for me anymore, because I'd realized something she hadn't yet. Her power over me only existed because I had willingly given it to her. And I had just taken it back. About 6 weeks into this new reality, Chloe finally broke. We were at the kitchen table. She was picking at her food, barely eating, then she looked at me, her voice small. "Why are you doing this?" I knew exactly what she meant. Why wasn't I playing her game anymore? Why wasn't I chasing her? Why wasn't I the manageable husband she'd spent 3 years shaping? I looked right back at her and said, "Because I'd rather be alone than be controlled." Every single word was true. That sentence hung heavy in the air between us, like smoke. And for the first time since that phone call, I saw something in her eyes that looked like actual fear. Not the manipulative kind, but genuine, raw fear. Because she was finally realizing the game was over, and she had no idea what came next. That kitchen table moment changed everything. Not because I'd uttered some magic words, but because Chloe finally understood I meant it. I would genuinely walk away rather than continue living in her control system. The next morning, she didn't try any of her usual tactics. She just sat across from me at breakfast, looking utterly exhausted, and said she wanted to talk. Really talk. Not the superficial dance we'd been doing for weeks. I told her I was listening. She asked me, point blank, if I wanted a divorce. I took a slow breath and said no, I didn't want a divorce, but I also didn't want what we'd had for the past 3 years. I told her I wanted a partnership where respect wasn't conditional, where intimacy wasn't currency, where we made decisions together instead of her using distance to get her way. And then, I said what might be the most important thing I've ever said to her: if the game comes back, I'm gone. Not as a threat, but as a simple, undeniable reality. She didn't get defensive, as I expected. She just started crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but the raw, honest kind that comes from truly recognizing something you've desperately avoided. She claimed she didn't even realize she was doing it. Said her mom had always treated her dad that way. Said her friends operated the same. She honestly believed this was just how you maintained power in a relationship, so you wouldn't get taken advantage of. I asked her if she thought I'd been walking all over her before she started this whole control system. She went quiet for a long time, then admitted no, I hadn't. She'd just been scared of losing control. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't about me at all. It never had been. It was about her own deep-seated fear, disguised as a strategy. I told her we needed help, professional help, because I couldn't fix this alone, and she clearly didn't know how to stop, even if she wanted to. She agreed. No fight, no excuses, just a simple, okay. The very next week, we found a marriage counselor, Dr. Evans, who specialized in communication patterns and power dynamics. And I won't lie, that first session was brutal. Chloe had to sit there and actually articulate what she'd been doing. She had to hear herself say out loud that she used emotional withdrawal as a tool. Watching her face as the words left her mouth, as she truly heard how it sounded, was almost unbearable. Dr. Evans didn't judge, didn't take sides, just asked those piercing questions that made both of us incredibly uncomfortable. By the end of that first hour, we both knew we had months of incredibly difficult work ahead. The next 8 weeks were disorienting, like learning to walk again after a serious injury. Dr. Evans gave us homework, actual assignments on expressing needs directly instead of through manipulation, on sitting with discomfort instead of creating distance, on treating each other like teammates, not opponents. Chloe fought tooth and nail. I could literally see her battling every instinct to revert to old patterns, but she kept trying. There were moments she'd start to withdraw, then visibly catch herself. Moments she'd get frustrated, wanting to punish me with coldness, but instead, she'd actually say, "I'm frustrated right now, and I need some space," like a normal human being. And every single time she did that, every time she chose honesty over manipulation, a tiny spark of hope would ignite within me. But I didn't soften my boundaries. That was absolutely crucial. I kept going to the gym, kept making plans with my brother, kept existing as my own person, because I needed to be certain her changes weren't just temporary adjustments to reel me back into control. Dr. Evans actually affirmed this, saying I was doing the right thing by maintaining my independence. That real change had to occur with me being fully myself, not shrinking again to make her comfortable. Chloe didn't like hearing that initially, but eventually, she grasped that my boundaries weren't punishments, they were simply requirements. Around week 10, something genuinely shifted. We had a disagreement about holiday plans. Her family wanted us for Thanksgiving, but I'd already committed to my brother's place. In the old system, this would have triggered days of cold treatment. Instead, Chloe took a deep breath and said, "I'm disappointed, but I understand you made a commitment." Then she suggested we do a separate visit with her family the following weekend. No games, no guilt trips, no withdrawal, just an actual compromise reached through actual, honest conversation. I almost didn't trust it, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it never did. She just accepted the solution and moved on. The other significant change was her friendships. She began distancing herself from Brooke and Sarah, the very friends who'd been laughing about control tactics on that speakerphone call months earlier. She confided in me one night that she couldn't listen to them anymore. Every time they started swapping manipulation strategies, she'd feel sick. She'd finally started seeing how toxic that entire dynamic was. She didn't cut them off completely, but she began setting boundaries, opting out of those conversations, changing the subject when they went down that path. 3 months after that kitchen table conversation, we're still together, still actively working on things, still in counseling every other week. We're not perfect. We still have conflicts, but we resolve them faster now, cleaner, without the games. I didn't lose myself to save the marriage. I found myself, and because of that, the marriage finally got a real chance. Chloe isn't the same person she was 6 months ago, and neither am I. She doesn't control me. I don't walk on eggshells. We simply exist as two actual people, trying to build something real. The other day, she apologized again, completely unprompted. Said she was sorry for all the years she'd wasted treating our marriage like a chess game. I told her I forgave her, and I truly meant it. But I also told her I'd never go back to being that version of myself who would accept control in exchange for peace. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "I don't want you to." And I believed her, not just because she said it, but because she'd proven it. Through months of consistent, difficult change. Through choosing genuine partnership over selfish power. Through doing the uncomfortable, hard work instead of retreating into comfortable manipulation. I stayed, but not because I felt trapped. I stayed because the game had finally, definitively ended. We're building something new now, something that doesn't demand me to shrink or her to control. And honestly, that's the only version of this marriage worth having. If someone had told me 6 months ago that overhearing a single phone conversation would completely dismantle and then painstakingly rebuild my entire relationship, I would have laughed. But here we are. The very thing she thought gave her all the power turned out to be the thing that nearly destroyed us. And the moment I stopped caring about losing it all was the moment we both truly got free. What do you think about this story?